The once fertile plains of Fars had become as barren as the Lut-Salt Desert. A few arrow shots from Persepolis, the Kushans, bloodthirsty warriors from the east, were attacking Persia.
This is Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. We're here taking an early look at the game from a few hours of the experience, so be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is the first entry in the Prince of Persia franchise after many years. We've seen various takes and changes on the series, but it's really rarely ever dives into the 2D kind of space. I mean, there's been a couple entries here or there, but largely we're sort of used to a platforming in a 3D space, kind of akin to Assassin's Creed, for those that aren't experienced with Prince of Persia, because honestly it really has been that long since we've actually seen this series return or really be available to people. So those that are a bit younger probably are very unfamiliar with the series at this point, and I think that's a pretty good comparison. This one is, however, very different. This is in the veins of a Metroidvania experience where you are exploring a largely open environment where by completing various tasks and challenges and gaining new abilities, skills, and talents, you are able to explore more unique spaces and achieve your particular goals within this space. So I've kind of structured this from a editing perspective, just kind of showing a little bit of the opening segment that sets the stage for these immortal warriors that are coming into battle, and then a bit of me talking over essentially like exploration, and then a large non-commentary section that's just sort of a straight played area, just so you can kind of see what the progression in gameplay is like if you don't want commentary and whatnot, as I think this is a good way to structure this. Now, I am only allowed to show a specific amount of gameplay, but they really had no restrictions on what I could show you, so I did try to keep it, in my perspective, in my opinion, spoiler free, if that makes sense, whereas other previews of this might dive into what I think are some more spoiler type elements of the experience. So let's talk a little bit about this. Like, Prince of Persia is a really cool series. You know, it's action, it's usually got elements of like time and puzzles and exploration. And I think that's actually really well alive here. I wasn't actually anticipating much from this particular experience because it's like, oh, it's like a 2D platformer, maybe a little bit more 2.5D, but I was kind of looking at it and I'm like, I don't know. You know, is this going to be like a game that I'm really interested in? Metroidvanias, it's kind of like, for me, usually it's a bit hit or miss because it does kind of lean into elements of like the Souls-like sort of difficulty, and you know, for me that's usually a little not my particular cup of tea. But I was actually really enjoying myself. I was kind of just sitting there at the beginning being like, oh, okay, this is so, you know, we're coming through here, we're cutting stuff up. But then as I started exploring and visiting more areas and doing more stuff and gaining more abilities, I was actually really impressed and intrigued by the layers of depth within this one, because you were puzzle solving, but the puzzles were very kind of like logical, and then you'd move to areas and you'd actually be gaining useful abilities, and you could kind of choose which like sort of extra traits you'd have on for your character to either help you in combative or strategic scenarios. And I thought that was really quite interesting. I loved the variety of areas. And then of course there's these different bosses in these mythical areas. But the general gist of the narrative is that, you know, there's this war going on and Persia's having troubles, like I've mentioned, and you're part of this team, and then what happens is the royalty, you know, someone is taken, and it goes to this sort of lost temple, this area people don't go to anymore, and you have to go there on what is originally conceived as a bit of a rescue mission, but you're really trying to understand the mystery. So there's a lot of characters that are, you know, kind of perceived as enemies, but you'll wander up to them, and time has worked a little differently for those that have become stranded in this area. You're not necessarily seeing warriors that are out to kill you. Some of them are, obviously, but some of them are kind of acting as a bit of a warning where it's like, oh, for you it's been this time, but for me it's been so much more. And it kind of is one of those interesting time type of wonder experiences, if that makes any sort of sense. Like, I think some people get an idea of what I'm talking about, but even past that, I really am not sure the full scope of what's going on in this either. Like, I did play, as I mentioned, like quite a few hours of gameplay, so I got like a good sense of it. Like, I definitely have a good understanding of it. I got to see some really cool parts of the game, do quite a bit of it, and get a good tease. I think this is actually going to be a very, very lengthy sort of experience for sure for those that dive into it. Like, if you like this type of genre, I think this is very well put together. It's quite an excellent and polished experience from what I played as well, and very aesthetically quite beautiful. I'm looking forward to seeing it in like a full sort of 4K would be fantastic. Like, I'm looking forward to the final release now, because I do think it is aesthetically quite beautiful, gameplay-wise quite cool, and it's just got like a neat kind of color and aesthetic and vibe and atmosphere to it. And I think that final look, because the way we get displayed this stuff is in a way that doesn't really truly let the aesthetic shine, but I was kind of like, oh, this looks really, really nice and looks really smooth and clean to play, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be really, really neat. But yeah, that's that mystery sense to it as well, where I'm kind of just like, what is the end game direction of where they're going? What is this kind of mystery? How does this fit into, I guess you would say, the greater overall lore or setup of Prince of Persia, or even if it does, I guess, as well, because I can kind of like guess, if that makes sense. Like, I kind of piece together where I think everything is headed, and it's just really interesting because there's these elements of, you know, mythology, discovery, mystery, and time being played with, because time is a little different here, right? Like, time is something that is in puzzles, time is something that impacts different characters in different ways, and it adds to the layers of really neat confusion as your individual has a particular understanding of time and perspective, and that's always being challenged throughout what I played. Some will just be like, oh, I'm here to slash and hack and destroy and, you know, kill and solve puzzles. That's totally cool, but the story here is really quite fascinating too. And it's really interesting to see that kind of play out and evolve. And as I said, I only visited a few different areas, but the game seems just truly massive. And there's so many areas that I kind of saw, and my guide would kind of be like, oh, you have to go and get something from later on to see this. So it's kind of like, you know, what you're seeing now is just like even a small glimpse of it, and even areas that I got to visit, I didn't get to fully visit because there's so much more that I can go back and interact with, and so much more I could go back and do. The only disappointment with these demos is I'm going to have to redo all this myself from the beginning, which is kind of funny, but yeah. And then you get this map, and the map is really cool too. I kind of keep showing quick glimpses of it because I'm just trying to be like, okay, where am I going, orienting myself, understanding where I'm headed. I'm sure some other players, you know, when they do the Metroidvania type thing, they like to free explore, free see stuff, but I'm, you know, trying to like have a guidance. I'm trying to do so much of the game, see so much of it, you know, we're under time pressures, all that sort of thing when I'm doing this kind of work, obviously. But yeah, the map is really quite neat because you can create these kind of like memory sequences of certain areas. It allows you to track where you're going. So in the past, like Metroidvania games, at least I can't really think of too many that allowed you to create like literally snapshots of particular areas and regions, and kind of be like, give yourself more of a remembrance, particularly and specifically, of an area you want to like revisit later on, where it's kind of like, I couldn't get here, or this is an area I need to go, but I want to go here first and look around. So that was really, really quite helpful. And then the game itself has some pretty challenging boss fights. Like, you know, if you're into that kind of thing, it'll probably be pretty satisfying. I'm sure there will be like some really good difficulty changes and options too. But yeah, this creature here is fantastic. But this boss just absolutely slaughtered me for quite a few tries. Usually for these, you know, demos, they make them a lot easier for the players that are doing them, like the press players and stuff. But yeah, I don't necessarily think they really toned it down, because like this thing was just yeah, it was smacking me around. It took a while for me to actually get the rhythm of like the blocking and then the battling back. I love this bit where it's like your destiny just goes roar. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this look at the game. Here's some non-commentary gameplay just so you can see more of it in action.
Any sign of the prince?
None. And I've been scouring the place for 3 days now.
3 days? Artaban, but we only got here hours ago.
Hours for you. Days for me. Years for Ardashir's man.
Not so rough with the prince.
Anahita, I know you. You're loyal to the crown. What is the meaning of this?
There is still a long way to go. Hold! I know that Athra...
Anahita, stop right there!
Go after him! Not so rough with the prince.